Good morning, everyone. I am State Assembly Member Victor Pichardo, and I just want to take this opportunity to welcome everybody to the Somos Futuro conference in Puerto Rico. Today we'll be discussing the 4 ingredients for Hispanic business success: great entrepreneurs, access to capital, and champions and lifters. This is an important issue not only to the folks that I represent back home, but to the entire Latino community at large. We have such power, such resources, and we just have to figure out a way to access them, to organize them, and use them in a very effective manner. I sit on the Small Business Committee in the State Assembly, and the issue that we always run into is that we create and we try to make government help small businesses access to the resources that they need and cut through the red tape that sometimes small businesses encounter. In my district in particular, it's not the big box stores that employ my constituents. It's not the large companies that do that. It's the small mom and pop shops, it's the bodegas, it's the farmacias, it's the ferreterias, and also the sort of the healthcare industry through Montefiore and St. Barnabas and those things. But we need to make sure that we create a sort of a pipeline and a database of where these small businesses can access and not only increase their revenue and generate and drive up business, but also increase my constituents' ability to get a job. Because ultimately, when everyone is employed and working and making a buck and making sure that they keep a roof over their head, food on the table, and able to send their kids to school, we all win. And we want to make sure that we continue to have that. So I want to take this opportunity to introduce our moderator, Monika Montilla, who is the president and CEO of Altura Capital Partners, Small Business Community Capital LLC. And we are joined by our panelists, Maria Torres Springer, Teri Coaxum, Jaime Fortño, Michael Garner, and Friedrich Reifkohl Maldonado. If I butchered your name, my apologies. And again, welcome to this panel. We hope to have a very healthy and robust discussion about these issues. And Monika, if you're ready, take it away.
So good morning, everyone. We have a nice and cozy and small audience. And I think that's exactly our challenge, is to bring the issues of entrepreneurialism and capital into the agenda of Somos and into the agenda of every legislator, every elected official. Because when I think about the challenges of the Hispanic community, we talk about immigration, healthcare, education. If we address capital issues and we are able to create successful business owners, we take care of the rest. A family that is able to be a successful business owner is able to take their kids to school, is able to pay for their health care, is able to even resolve immigration issues. They get an EB2 or an EB5 visa. And so entrepreneurialism and successful careers in business is really the key ingredient, in my estimation, to be able to lift our community. And there's a lot of work that we need to do in that area, because when I think about how important is that agenda in the bigger picture agenda, it's still a small percentage. Think about how many of you are here today. So those of you that are here today, I'm sure that you're here because you're either a small business owner, or you're a champion and a lifter, or you can provide access to markets or access to capital. In my own capacity, I am a partner with a small business fund where we invest in small businesses. And I care immensely about this because I think that New York, being the city in the state, being the city in the entire country with the largest population of Latinos, really needs to move forward with the agenda of entrepreneurialism. I had a wonderful day yesterday with a group of bankers in Puerto Rico who are looking at our fund to make investments. And because we can invest $1 million to $15 million in small businesses. So they're very excited about what we're doing in the Hispanic market in US and they want to join in that process of providing capital and providing opportunity for business owners. So I also think that that opportunity of uniting New York entrepreneurialism and capital sources with Puerto Rico is definitely a significant opportunity that we should all continue to think about and develop. As you can see, the only slide I'm going to show you today is a slide that talks about the 4 ingredients of business success. And let's think about it. Let's go through them together. A great entrepreneur or group of entrepreneurs with a solid business plan. And we have 2 of them today, one in the coffee industry, one in the construction project management industry, and they both will have an opportunity to share their stories, and we'll learn about their success, and we'll also learn about their challenges and struggles to get more access to capital, more access to markets. The second ingredient is access to an adequate deployment of capital to maximize business potential. And capital comes in many forms. It might be debt capital, it might be equity capital, it might be mezzanine. A fund like ours provides access to any one of those 3. One of the challenges we have when we think about Hispanic business owners is that the smallest investment we can do is $1 million. And we're not doing early stage, or we're not doing startups. So we need companies that have at least 3 years of operating experience and at least $1 million in EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation, so that we can do an injection of capital. There are many Hispanic business owners that are at that stage today. Our fund invests in small businesses in general, but we certainly have a clear enthusiasm in investing in women and minority-owned firms. Capital is an area where we need to continue to work with our pension funds, with our banks, with our insurance companies, and with all of those that are in the market known as institutional investors, who can be capital providers for the funds that are then going to invest in small businesses. Oh my God, I'm competing against Sonia's voice. Are you able to hear me? Okay. Okay, so let's raise the voice, right? Okay, so the third ingredient is the ingredient of access to markets, right? We can have wonderful business owners, and they can actually be well capitalized, but if they can't sell their product or service, we're also stuck. We also have an incomplete picture. And today we have 2 wonderful representatives of what access to markets mean. Mike Garner from the MTA, who's a champion and a lifter and leads the supplier diversity efforts at MTA, and the Small Business Administration. The Small Business Administration, in my estimation, plays a fundamental role in allowing and providing opportunity for small business owners to grow. You can go into the SBA website and you can have an incredible tool to build your business plan. You can learn about who are capital providers. You can go to events and webinars and forums where they teach you around capital, around marketing, around operations. So I truly am I admire the work of the SBA, and I think they provide a very important role in both access to capital and access to markets, and also in the first one because they help entrepreneurs become bigger and better. Okay, and the fourth ingredient that has been really the result of my 20 years building businesses and providing capital is that if you don't have the ingredient of champions and lifters, you might have a great entrepreneur, and that entrepreneur might have capital and might have access to markets, but the champions and lifters, and I feel that people like Mike, people like Teri, Coaxum, and the SBA are those types of entities, the ones that connect the dots. We frequently might come across a business owner that has 90% of what they need, and it's so easy and so simple to say, you just don't qualify. Come back in a year, you don't qualify. And it's the concept of a champion and a lifter, the one that takes that case and figures out what is it that can be done? How do we really create a path for this business owner to be able to have an opportunity? And frequently, as heads of supplier diversity, just want to check the box, and I'm being very honest and straightforward with you here. Frequently, we have people in supplier diversity roles that are just in the look for the 3 or 4 firms that they need in order to put their category in a checkbox and get done with it. And they're not champions and lifters. And that role of being a champion and a lifter is one that I feel we have to ask for and require from the heads of supplier diversity, from the heads of diversity, from those that have the role to put together and connect the dots, so that when you get a no from that Treasury Department or from that procurement person that says, here's the reason why we can't hire this firm, that is when a champion and a lifter comes into action and say, let's talk about the how, let's talk about the path. And so in my experience, these 4 ingredients of great entrepreneurs, access to capital, access to markets, and champions and lifters is what we need to continue to cultivate. Sometimes I feel that the conversation around capital is a complex one, and one that our legislators at times, because they don't come from the world of finance, feel that it's sort of a separate thing, that it's easier to talk about our education, our immigration, our healthcare. And what I would like to present to you is the notion that if we don't include the notion of building our own businesses, 20 years away from now, we're still going to have the same issues around healthcare, around education, around immigration. The only way, we live in a capital system, and the only way we're going to be able to eradicate our problems is if we become successful business owners. So I would like to extend an invitation to everyone here to be a multiplier of that conversation and to think about what are ways in which you can be an agent of change, whether you're determined to be a great business owner or whether you have an ability to influence a capital provider. One of the things we've been doing in the last fund that we raised that has been a very interesting conversation is knocking on the door of commercial banks and banks that have CRA obligations. Does everyone here know what CRA is? Community Reinvestment Act? So think about it. Community Reinvestment Act is a law through which banks have the obligation to reinvest a certain portion of their capital in communities. And historically, much of that capital has gone into housing. And of course, yes, it's needed, and it's a wonderful way to give back to the community. One of the areas where I think that legislators can help as advocates is inviting banks to use more of their CRA capital to invest in our small businesses. And that is absolutely in compliance with CRA. We've had the experience of just doing a first closing on our fund where we were targeting a 90 million closing, and we're now at 120 million, and much of that came from banks. It also came from insurance companies, from public pension funds, from corporations around the country. But I feel that there is a key and a capital source that is a very important one for our community, which is harnessing CRA. And I leave you with that thought because many of you are somehow involved, and especially, legislators get knocked on their door frequently by financial institutions. So I invite you, when you have those conversations, to tell them, ask them the question, tell me about your CRA program, and tell me about how your CRA program is being utilized to channel more resources into small businesses and minority businesses. When it comes to access to markets, I think that the key conversation is around champions and lifters. It's not only saying I have a supplier diversity program, but I have a group of people who are doing every effort every day to bring more business owners in contact and exposed to the opportunities and really helping them to find a way. I can tell you in our experience, we work today and we have the honor and pleasure of working with 18 of the largest institutional investors in the country and the world. I can tell you that every one of those relationships has been the result of a champion and a lifter on the other side. Somebody telling us, you have this board meeting tomorrow. Be aware of this and that. This person is going to ask you this question. This is what you need to answer. And that visibility into the organization is what a champion and lifter does. So wanted to create the framework for this conversation, and as our as esteemed assemblyman shared, we have a lineup of wonderful panelists, and I'm going to ask the two business owners that are accompanying us today, Jaime and Fred, to share with us a little bit about their ingredient number one, right? Being a great entrepreneur. Tell us your story about building your company, and tell us a little bit about how you have faced the challenges and how you have overcome the challenges of getting access to capital and access to markets. So with that, I will have probably Fred ask you to begin the conversation around entrepreneurialism. Thank you, Fred. Wonderful. Thank you very much, and so happy that you're part of this conversation. You've always been champions and lifters, so thank you for joining us. Fred, would you want to come here or you want to stay there? Sure. Please come over.
So good morning, and thank you for inviting me to this panel to speak. I've been thinking a lot about what to say at this panel, because there's so many ingredients that go into building a business. It's not just you buy a box of cereal or a box of cake mix and you put it together. It's very complicated and complex, especially a business like ours, which is just to let you know, we are a Puerto Rico grown firm. We started here in the mid-50s. And basically over 40 years, it was an engineering firm focused on providing services to the local market. In the mid-90s, our CEO and president, Jesus Juarez, who's here, bought the company. It was still a very small engineering firm with a vision. And that vision was to convert this small office in Puerto Rico into the largest Hispanic-owned engineering firm in the United States. That's a pretty ambitious vision, especially starting off where we are. In the mid-90s, the vision was implemented with a strategy, a three-pronged strategy of growth along geographic presence, market expansion, and service expansion. Roll forward to the late 1990s, and that vision was beginning to be implemented by growing into the South Florida market and growing into the Midwest and the Mid-Atlantic. And then the vision started catching on. One of the things that you talk about, Monika, the challenges of growing a business include not just capital, financial capital, but human capital. And I can say that the vision attracted not entrepreneurs, but professionals like myself to a vision of a company that was who I am, a Puerto Rican firm, daring to compete. I worked with very large engineering firms. I worked in the Middle East. I worked in Southeast Asia, and I wanted to be a part of this. So it was a self-fulfilling prophecy in the sense that we attracted the talent necessary to continue that vision and that growth. Roll forward to today, we are in the New York market. We have some very large contracts that we've been able to win with the help of some of the champions that you mentioned, some of those ingredients. We are in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland. We're also in Florida, and we've taken that same vision of being a significant Hispanic-owned and probably the largest Hispanic-owned engineering firm, full-service project delivery firm, as we are now expanding our services, and taking it into Central and South America. So we've basically said we are going to use the same ingredients that we used to penetrate markets in the U.S. where Hispanics had a significant presence and were growing, and turn it around and present ourselves as a U.S. company with the component of having the affinity of penetrating these markets. I think that having the vision, hard work, and success, and I want to talk now about the champions, and I want to give an example of how we were able to continue to expand our presence in the New York market. About 3 years ago, we went to see Mike Garner at the MTA. And he immediately saw the potential of the company, because one of the challenges that we have as a company is to be able to, we are a significant firm, and we are used to being primes. We're used to being a tier one, having grown from this market. But we knew that in order to get to tier one, you have to take some steps. And we sat with Mike and we said, listen, we have a full service capability where we can provide a lot of services to the MTA. How can you help? And the first thing he did was he called 6 of the chiefs of different departments into a room, sat us in front of them. We were able to tell our story. And roll forward 3 years, we're part of 2 major contracts. One, a $20 million contract. Another one is a $50 million contract. We're still tier 2. We're not a prime. But that opportunity and support and belief in what we could do has opened up the doors. I think that, in summary, some of the key challenges that we still face in order to get to a tier one isn't necessarily the diversity programs or the diversity support that entities like the MTA have, but it's about capacity building. So it's not just about, you mentioned checking the box on a percentage or achieving a goal. I think it's also about helping build capacity. Because one thing is to get 30% of a contract and you didn't learn anything, you didn't build anything, you didn't have an experience that you could sell at the next project. It's about having a meaningful piece of a project so that you can then sell on the next project and build that resume. And I don't know if you all have any questions or if you want me to pass it on to Jaime, but that's sure.
What a great business owner is. And to highlight a little bit, and before Jaime comes and shares with us, he's actually going to show us a little movie, right, Jaime? So when we think about entrepreneurs, think about product, people, competitive advantages, production, operations, administrative, financial management. Successful business owners have to complete a very comprehensive picture in order to be successful. And with that in mind, of what it takes to be a good entrepreneur, I'm going to pass it on to Jaime.
Right,
So he shares
if you don't mind helping me getting to
Yes, tell me when.
to explore, all right?
Okay.
And just put ticketcoffee.com. That would be helpful. Well,
Okay,
good morning.
yep.
I don't need the mic. Jorge, my name is Jaime Fortño. I have been in entrepreneur since 1991. I came out of a business school not too long before that, and my parents were expecting that I would go to Wall Street or something like that. When I told them I want to be in agribusiness, my mom almost fainted. She said, you got a scholarship to go to Harvard, and you're coming back to do what your grandfather did and went bankrupt. Why are you doing this? I remember that one of my brothers took me out to lunch and said, Jaime, agriculture is for poor people. You should not be in that business. A year after that, when we were in Harrods, in Pochon, Red Square in Russia, and Gramercy Tavern and other places, that same brother was saying I always told him that he could do it. This is the right way to go. But my story is, hopefully I would love to emulate, you guys' stories. We are a small business. We're a family business. I have been in the coffee, ticketcoffee.com, if you don't like this. All right.
Yeah, it's because we don't have connection. I'm trying to get the connection. If anybody's an expert in getting connection here, let me show me a list of available. Hilton meeting, okay.
And if your family or if you have roots to Louisiana, you would know what this is. This is a coffee bag. There are coffee bags from all over the world. What you might not know is that the second largest employer in the world is the coffee industry, behind the oil and related products. I work in 2 segments of the coffee industry. In Puerto Rico, which I chose to stay in Puerto Rico and try to make it happen out of here, I am part of a production and export firm called Zumbador today. We used to be the Auto Selecto, which at some point we were in the 90s, like one of the top firms in the world. And something called Hurricane George showed up in 1998. And the
Yeah,
But the green side of our business is okay, perfect, all right.
yeah, but come and tell me what,
figure it out,
okay, over there, what is
Don't
the?
worry, don't worry. I'll take it from here. Don't worry. I got it. All right. So we're a green coffee producer in Puerto Rico. We do specialty coffee like Hawaii. We're a more expensive coffee because of the labor cost. In my development to do this, there was no capital of the island. The island, we lost a lot of the
Here you go.
businesses. So for 2 years, I went around to the people looking for capital, and even though I've always made money for investors in coffee, it was expensive because no one had money. So I actually went to a local bank and said, we have this contract with Starbucks, we have this coffee, all you have to do is give us, a short-term loan for the next. Can you give me your house, your bank account, your second child, and the grandchildren that you have them? And I said, but everything is up. So being in agriculture is a hard, market to be in. But anyway, in the whole process, we learned many things. And I think you got it perfect. And in the end, we were able to obtain a starting point. This is our second crop in our return to market. I don't think I need this, do I? No. So that is happening. But what I want to talk to you about today is that I have advised a lot of retailers across the world for many, many years. Along with being a coffee producer, I've been in the advertising world. I actually even run an ad agency in New York for DDB. And so I knew always trying to use our marketing talents for this. And not too long ago, I came to see this nice lady and her husband, Jay, and I said, I'm tired of being the green. I think it's time that we come to the world and say we want to be a retailer, a wholesaler, and on the road side. Why? Because you would never buy one of these bags in what is the supermarket that's looking for you, whatever it may be, and say, honey, I showed up with 100 pounds, what do we do with now? You would go and buy something that is closer to this, correct? So a coffee bag. So with my partner, Luis Silva, Luis, and I, we recently launched Ticket, and we're doing two things. One thing we're doing, so you're going to see here, the other thing is we're actually now in the process of looking to, as a Hispanic business, towards a Hispanic capital, acquiring mainstream companies and turning into what the vision that I believe we have of this. Can I show you a 2-minute video? I know I want to be quiet and let everyone else do their thing. Like you, I'm a Mac guy, so hopefully that will work. Okay, this.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Before we begin, I want to make sure that we introduce two other of my colleagues who walked in. Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer, and I think my newest colleague from the Bronx, Assemblyman Michael Blake, who's
All right, welcome, bienvenidos. All right, so just to see what the future of coffee looks like, there's a little bit of a video here about.
In the face of deadlines, stress, loneliness, routine, and blandness, an emerging coffee company asked itself, hey self, instead of attracting customers, why don't we build a community? A place where everyone could gather and share their views on life and their love for that sweet nectar of the gods. Coffee. Oh yeah, so how did we name this crazy sweet concept? We went to nature for inspiration and called ourselves Thicket Coffee. It's a field we know well. How well, you ask? Well, we're 4th-generation coffee farmers, roasters, and exporters. We've pretty much devoted our lives to it. Voltaire coffee craze devoted.
Ahaha!
We know what it's like to be scared, pessimistic, and gloomy. And also know that it does not work. Which is why we built a place where people of all views and shapes can gather for purposeful shared optimism. That is Thicket Coffee, the place to drink happy thoughts.
Without someone like Monika and without consumers, we can do it. So we are follow our story. Hopefully, we'll see everyone.
Thank you, Jaime. And when I think about the entrepreneurial spirit, I don't think there's anything more beautiful, right? People with a great idea, with great passion, that have to bring capital and access to markets and champions and lifters so that they can make their dreams come true. And if we're able to multiply on the hundreds and thousands, we're going to have a successful story as a community. And we're going to be architects of our own solutions. So with that in mind, there's one slide that I wanted to share. Oh, and there's a thought that it's one of my favorite sentences by Margaret Mead. This is something we can do together. This is not some, rocket science experience that is outside of our hands. As she very wisely said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And I think that if we are able to include in our Hispanic agenda successful entrepreneurialism, so that every time we talk about immigration and education and healthcare, we just put that very powerful concept of entrepreneurial success, we really are going to lift our communities and be architects of our own solutions. So now I'm going to ask two champions and lifters, people who can give us access to markets, people who can give entrepreneurial success, to provide entrepreneurial success through resources. Teri and Mike, let me see. I think probably Teri has a great closing story because she embraces many industries, many support systems. So I'm going to ask Teri to close the panel, and I'm going to ask Mike from the MTA, a big champion and lifter, to tell us about how he runs his program and how he's been a champion and a lifter in his process.
Good morning. All right, and thank you. And thank you for keeping the focus on MWDBEs. And let me just tell you, historically as government, we've really failed to include emerging MWDBEs because our focus has always been on outreach and certification. So you meet firms, you bring them back in, and you get them certified, and they still can't get work because you have not eradicated the historical barriers to entry. And construction is always focused on 4 areas: access to capital, access to surety bonding, access to effective training, and access to the right size projects. At the MTA, this mega, gigantic agency, the largest agency in the region, we transport 6.5 million of our customers each and every day, spanning 5,000 miles, 68,000 employees, and everything that we do is big, right? Eastside Access, $8.5 billion project. Second Avenue Subway, $4.6 billion project. The average subcontract is $400 million. I don't know of too many MWDB firms who can handle a $400 million subcontract because of the lack of wherewithal to capital and access to surety bonding. So you often hear agencies say, well, we want to help you and we want to do X, Y, and Z, but it's in violation of state law. And so what we did was that we changed the state law. We found somebody in the Assembly by the name of Keith Wright. We found someone in the State Senate by the name of John Sampson. And we changed the state law, which now we have the nation's largest small business mentoring program. And it's this, right? We debundle projects. We train contractors. We pay contractors in 5 days. We give them the ability to work to us as prime contractors because we want to put their destiny in their own hands. And it takes vision, it takes resources, it takes the leadership of the top. I can ask any government agency or any private sector company 3 questions, and I can evaluate their program. Who does the person report to? If they don't report to the top, the CEO, then that program is going to fail. How many staff do you have? And how many resources do you have? Far too often, we allow agencies and government to put C-team players running these programs with no resources and no staff, right? And it is always incredible to me how the minority business community allow government and the private sector not to put Class A people in running these programs. qualify people in these programs with access to the top. That's what we did at the MTA. And one of our not only our chairman and our whole entire MTA board is focused on this, because it is imperative for us not to only spend taxpayers' monies in a cost-effective manner, but we must spend taxpayers' monies in a inclusive manner. For far too long, we have created jobs at the top. You know, our $33 billion capital plan that we have, $33 billion, 15 firms in the world do half that work for us. 15 companies, Skanska Civil, Schiavone, those large companies, they do half of a $33 billion project. I mean, our plan. We need to do a better job of making sure that we're now not only creating jobs at the top, but we're creating jobs at the bottom as well. Because in our region, for every $1 million that's spent in our industry, a total of 26 jobs are created or maintained. We need to ensure that those jobs are being created and maintained with the MW and DBE firms. So not only is our chairman solely behind this, the MTA board, our vice chairman, Freddie Ferrer, came in and he had two questions. His questions were, who's getting the contracts and who are we hiring? And so we did a study and we looked at the legal fees that we paid last year, because the MTA is sued almost every day, as you know. So we spent $30 million in legal fees, and we spent $465,000 of that with certified minority law firms. Freddie went ballistic. He said, fix it. So we went out with a RFP, which now allows us to bring in 15 minority women-owned law firms and put them on a panel, so we can now issue them fees and assignments. And so also, finally speaking, we are the largest buyer of subway cars, rail cars, and buses in the country, right? For far too long, the manufacturers have indicated to us that they cannot find qualified minority and firms in order to support their manufacturing process. And I listened to that for maybe about a month. And that gave me the opportunity to reach out to the Chrysler Group, Ford, and GM, who, as everyone in this room has known, has awarded billions of dollars to minority-owned firms since the late 1960s. And so we awarded a recent $1.8 billion railcar project to a manufacturing firm in Yonkers. And they hired Sandra Wilkins' firm right here, because we told them, not only are we not going to waive your goals, but you are going to create a robust program the same way as the big three automakers have done. So for that $1.8 billion project, we are looking not less than 20% of that being awarded to our New York State certified firms. And let me say the governor has announced a month ago that every New York State agency and authority will award 30% of their contracts to minority women-owned firms, 30%. The highest in the country. And I'm not sure if he knew that or not, but the day that he announced that, he created a lot of millionaires who were sitting in that room. And so this is not brain surgery. It takes resources, it takes vision, and it takes support. And the MTA is one of the agencies that are leading the way. And so I challenge any company in this room today that if you want to do business in New York State at the MTA, the doors of opportunities is here and is open for you. Because in the next 3 or 4 years, our new 5-year capital budget is going to be at least $33 billion. That's where the action is in New York State, in New York City, at the MTA. Thank you.
As I think about access to markets, there's two very important segments, right? One is government contracting and government-related agencies, but corporations, and through their supplier diversity programs, are also a very important and valuable source of growth for our businesses. And studies have showed that minority businesses that have access to markets and have access to contracts from corporations can significantly grow and can grow in a much larger pace and a much faster pace than those that are not. Before I ask Teri to close with her sharing the latest around SBA and all the wonderful work that SBA does, I want to share a little bit about capital, because I feel that evangelizing in the world of capital is always a very important part of what we should do at these forums. These are the questions that in the process of 20 plus years in this capital road, these are some of the most frequent questions that entrepreneurs ask around capital. Why is capital a key ingredient for success? What are the steps to get the capital I need? How much capital do I need? How do I prepare my company, my business plan, and my financial projections? Who provides capital? What types of capital are there? How do I get better every day at raising capital? And how do I accelerate growth for my company? And let me walk you in a very simple way through these answers. Why is capital a key ingredient of success? Because the only two possible sources of growth of a firm are either internal generation of revenues, of cash through revenues, through selling your product or service, or external debt or equity. And you build equity through internal generation of cash as well. So the only way to grow for a firm is through capital. What are the steps to get the capital I need? Working on the other three ingredients that we talked about today, right? Building a good firm, building access to markets, and building champions and lifters that will allow you to expand your organization. Figuring out where you are in the capital continuum is key. And this is one of the notions that very frequently our business owners stumble upon, because they go to a bank and the bank says no, and they go to another bank and the bank again says no, and they go to a third bank and the bank says no, and then they're like, okay, there's no capital. There are many sources of capital that are not only banks and commercial banks, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. How much capital do I need? The amount of capital you need is a result of what your business plan projections show. When you think about your business and you think about your monthly, quarterly, yearly, 5-year projections, and you think about how much are you going to sell and what is the infrastructure that you need in terms of people, of resources, of real estate, everything you need in order to put that recipe together of product and service, those cash flow projections are the ones that are going to tell you how much resources you need. There's an incredible amount of resources from the SBA, and I'm very glad that Jorge, who was the former SBA administrator for New York and Puerto Rico, is here with us. Jorge was a wonderful champion in New York. He was always talking to people about access to capital, about access to markets, and the SBA has wonderful resources that I'm sure Teri will share with us a little bit about, helping business owners to figure out what are their capital needs. Preparing your company and your business plan and your financial projections is sometimes a difficult endeavor, but it is possible, and there are resources from government and trade and industry associations and chambers. The opportunities are there. We just need to know where they are and seize them. So who provides capital, and what type of capital do I have access to? So let's think about capital in the two big buckets that are the only two buckets of capital. Well, there's mezzanine in between, quasi-equity, quasi-debt. But debt comes from many places. It comes from SBIC impact funds like us. And by the way, one of our biggest and strongest partners in that is the SBA, because the SBIC program is a program that was put in place more than 54 years ago that has channeled more than $50 billion to grow small businesses around America. I have the fortune of, they've told me that I'm the first Latina ever to access one of these licenses, which is something I feel proud of, but I feel also immensely sad about, because what that makes me think is that we need to work hard so that before I grow old, there's another 20 or 30 that are doing the same thing. So where's debt coming from? From SBIC impact funds, from SBIC funds, from micro lenders, from CDFIs, from friends and family who lend us money to develop our businesses, from community banks, commercial banks, specialized lenders, lending platforms. And one of the challenges that small businesses need to go through is, where do I fit? Where are all the different sources of debt that are available? And depending on my stage of development, depending on my industry, depending on my geography, many elements come to play to figure out where is the right capital coming from. When we think about equity, who are equity providers? Friends and family, again, people that invest in our business at the early stages when we just have a business plan or a pre-revenue situation. Angel investors, venture capital firms, SBIC funds, again, private equity funds, LBOs, IPOs. When we think about all these sources of capital, and then we think about the universe of Hispanic businesses and the universe of minority and women-owned businesses, some of the challenges we have is that we only fit in a few buckets. Think about private equity money. Checks are written in 10, 15, 30, $50 million, not to say $1, $2, $3 billion when you're talking about LBOs or IPO. How many Hispanic businesses have gone through an IPO? I think they're less than 5. So there's many sources of these capitals that are available in the marketplace, but that are not available to our firms, mostly because of issues of size. So we need to continue to work with capital providers in making sure that our type of firms have capital resources available for them. But we need to think about what industry we're in, what stage of development we're in, who's in our region. And I'd like to share the notion that is just part of the reality when we think about capital, that we continue to have an architectural gap in capital. There's much more demand than supply in the universes of minority businesses. And it's still a highly inefficient market for small businesses. And so that doesn't allow them to maximize their potential and to be part of a value creation ecosystem. So we must continue to work together to build those 4 ingredients for success, which will result in massive expansion for MWBEs and success for the corporations and the capital providers who support them. I wanted to finish with a chart that is a little bit busy, but I think it's it gives you clarity about the roadmap of capital. There's 4 elements here, or 5 elements here to share around capital. Think about architecture, think about size of companies, think about industries, stakeholders, and types of capital. All of these ingredients come to play if we are committed to building the right capital architecture. When we think about the architecture, there are laws that can influence, like Mike was sharing about, supplier diversity and creating spaces, not only for markets, but also for capital. So laws can work in favor of capital. The CRA that I was sharing with you is one very important legislation where we could sort of harness that capital to put it into small businesses. Policies, investment policies. Many of our pension funds today don't have investment policies that include promoting small businesses in their own region, in their own state. I think that's an absolute business imperative that we need to work on. And I know we have, representatives from people that have been big advocates of diversity. And I think that including to the diversity conversation, the capital for small business conversation is just a very important one to make sure that our companies continue to grow. Corporate governance, you think about the growth of the corporate governance arena and how every corporation in America today has corporate responsibility and corporate governance and takes it in a very serious way. Part of that good corporate governance should be providing support for the small businesses that are part of their region, that are part of their zone of influence. And when you think about size of companies, depending on where you are, whether you're at pre-revenue, you're up to $50,000, there's going to be some sources of capital. If you're at 50 to 250, some other sources. And depending where you are in the size of company, when revenue-wise, there'll be different sources of capital for you. And depending on the industry you're in, it's very different when you're in a mature industry as whether in a high-tech, high-growth industry. I think that one of the things that we have to do as a community and as a minority business community is think about which are our areas of largest priority. As we have challenges in education, we have challenges in healthcare, we should think about growing those industries and growing solutions that are nurtured by our own communities. When we think about stakeholders, we think about capital providers that can come from, from friends and family to angels to banks. We think about at the federal level, at the state level, at the local level. There's many stakeholders when we think about capital. And then there's different types of capital, the ones that we were sharing before. And I wanted to share this with you because as we think about building financial capacity, sometimes we sort of mix all of these elements in one conversation about capital. And I think that the approach we should take as a community is, where is the largest percentage of our business owners today? And what we're going to know is that the majority of our business owners have revenues of less than $25 million. And there are, for example, in New York, 2,200 Hispanic business owners that sell more than $1 million. At a national level, there's 44,000 Hispanic business owners that sell more than $1 million. So we need to start with, who are we trying to create an effort to grow? And we need to think about what that universe is comprised of, and therefore, what are the different architectures, what are different industries, who are the different stakeholders that we need to impact in order to ultimately create a capital road that serves our businesses, maximizes human potential, and maximizes high-quality job creation. In closing, a very important part of this conversation, as I've mentioned, is the Small Business Administration. The Small Business Administration today has a fantastic Hispanic leader who has been dealing with issues around capital, who was a banker and created and started a bank in California many years ago. So with that, I'm going to ask Teri to share and thank you, Teri, because throughout the years in this conversation, you've always been part of and a partner in this dialogue. And so we're all looking forward to hearing your thoughts around the SBA.
So first of all, I also want to recognize Jorge, stand up. Jorge is a professor at Hostos Community College now. He abandoned us at SBA. So Jorge. And I'm board member of Somos as well. And I also see a lot of faces that we've worked with over the years, so I just want to say thank you for being a part of this conversation. Let's see if I can pull up.
Do you want to put something up?
Yeah, here we go. It's in here already. See how good I am at this. All right. Since I'm the closer, I'll take one more liberty. Thank you so much to Assemblyman Victor Pichardo for being a part of this very important conversation. To Jaime and to Frederick, thank you so much for being wonderful entrepreneurs and showing stories, giving us testimonies and stories of what it takes to be a successful business leader, especially in today's times. And of course, Mike, it's always a pleasure to be a part of a conversation with you and all the things that you're doing over at MTA. So I want to talk to you about the Small Business Administration Office of Advocacy. But before I do that, I want to go into a lot of what the Small Business Administration has to offer to each of you, because we're talking about four ingredients. And so as we indicated earlier, it's not like you're just throwing everything into a box. There's all these different elements that you need when you're a business owner and when you're trying to grow. So we're talking about successful entrepreneurs like Jaime and Frederick, of course, access to markets, access to capital, and I'm glad and delighted to be in the same category as a champion and a leader today. So when we talk about the Small Business Administration, we're talking about the 3 C's. We're talking about capital access, and when we talk about capital access, we're not just talking in general terms. We're talking about guaranteed loans that the Small Business Administration offers, as well as through the 7A and through the 504 program, microloans as well. We're also talking about contracting with government. And most of us know government purchases is the biggest purchaser of goods and services, over $500 billion a year. And so it's important to be a part of that conversation as a small business owner. If you're looking to expand and grow, then contracting is one of those opportunities to do that. And then the third C being counseling and training. And a lot of us are aware of the small business development centers, the women-owned business centers, as well as the SCORE programs. And they're able to help small businesses with their counseling, with their training. They can help with the marketing. It can help with your finances and all of those things. And so now I'm the A in that equation. I'm the advocate. So what does that mean for you? That means that I am here to make sure when there's a regulatory concern that affects a small business, that I'm here to assist you with getting over that regulatory hurdle and getting to the next step in expanding and growing your business. There's three names that I want you to remember. Jorge is our former RA, our new RA. Her name is Kelly Ledette, and she wasn't able to be a part of this conversation today, but I encourage you to go on SBA.gov and see what resources are available, and Kelly Ledette, information is available there as well. She's our new RA covering New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. And then Yvette Colazo is actually our district director right here on the ground in Puerto Rico, working with small business every day on expanding and growing your business. And then we have John Milano as our acting district director in New York, and he's also here to help with expanding and growing your business. So I just gave you the SBA. So the Office of Advocacy, we're actually housed out of the Small Business Administration, but we are independent of the Small Business Administration. Independent meaning we have an independent budget, and independent meaning that my boss, Dr. Winslow Sargent, doesn't report to Maria Cantores Sweet. He reports directly to President Barack Obama. So what does that mean for you? That means that I'm on the ground, I'm your advocate, I'm here to help you expand and grow, make sure that you're getting the resources you need, directing you, because we're housed under Small Business Administration, all of the resources that Monika just talked about. The SBA is here to help you to plan and to grow and to do those things, and I'm here to also help you with as your advocate. So the Office of Advocacy was established in 1976, and we work with federal agencies. So what does that mean? That means that our office is actually at the table. Does anyone in here get up and read the Federal Registry? Anybody? No? Oh, I got one person in the room. Two people in the room. Excellent. Well, not many small business federal. Jaime, you read? No. Not a lot of small business get up and read the Federal Registry, but we do. And so when the 500 pages of rules came down by the SEC on crowdfunding, the Office of Advocacy was at the table talking to the federal agencies, but more importantly, we had roundtables around just that. You know, we talked to the angels, we talked to the VCs about access to capital, about crowdfunding. We spoke to the small business owners, and we got their opinions about how this was going to affect them, and we made sure that that information was transferred back to DC. So Dr. Winslow Sargent is my boss. He's the Chief Counsel of Advocacy, and he's a former business owner. I like to say he's our secret weapon because he understands the importance of what each and every one of you do, getting up and making payroll as a small business. But more importantly, he's also our secret weapon because he started his business, and 3 years later, he sold it for $900 million. And so he is definitely a strong component of making sure that you are able to do just that, expand and grow your business. This is not a dog and pony show. We're here to help you do that. We talked about being at the agency. So one of the things that I heard when I first got off the plane was the Caribbean Business had an article saying how to fix Puerto Rican's broken economy. And so one of the things that I did, and there was 11 different opinions of government saying this is how we do it. One of the things that I need to indicate is that you fix the Puerto Rican economy through small business. So why do I say that? I say that because the Office of Advocacy, one of the things we do is we highlight the importance of small business. And in doing so, I'd like to give you a few numbers. So in Puerto Rico, there's 44,631 small business establishments, 544,976 employees are employed by small establishments. So that means that we're fueling the small businesses are fueling the economy. So how do you fix that? You fix unemployment, you fix the economy through small business. And how do we do that? We work with small business to make sure that you're able to expand and grow. In New York, there's 2 million small business employing half of the 3.8 million of states and private workforce. And in New Jersey, there's 803 small business employing half of the 1.7 million of private workforce. So these are some of the ingredients. So we're talking about access, right? So access to markets, access to capital, access to making sure that we are helping you through undue burdens. That's what we're here. We're here to help you with regulatory concerns. So small businesses account for 99.7% of all firms, employ half of the private sector workforce, and pay 42.9% of private payroll tax. So we're working with you through regulations, through research, and they're reasonable making sure that they're reasonable alternatives for you in this room if you have a regulatory concern. And last year, we save small business, just like Frederick and Jaime, $2.4 billion in regulatory costs that would have been passed down to you. So I'm here today as an additional resource, making sure that you have what you need, also working through some of those barriers, talking about best practices and big ideas. And the current obstacles facing business today, as all of us know, are access to capital, which we're talking about here, access to markets. Burdensome regulation is also a big one. And so I'm here to listen to you, I'm here to talk to you, and I'm here to walk through some of those concerns so that I can continue to be your advocate, and most importantly, so the Small Business Administration can continue to offer you access to capital through counseling, training, and access to contracting opportunities through the 8A program, the Hub Zone programs, and access to some of the micro lenders. There's 419 bank branches here in Puerto Rico, and so Yvette Colazo is on the ground working with those businesses, working with those banks to make sure that the small businesses here have access to capital in that way as well. So I thank you so much for allowing me to share with you all the services and things that we have available, and I look forward to taking questions and talking to you about any of them. Thank you.
So the question I guess we all have here, and before we open to Q&A, is how do we move the needle, right? When it's about access to capital, and I'm so happy that some of our wonderful legislators are here with us today. What can they do when it comes to access to capital? And here's some of the thoughts that I'd like to share. We need to think about who can be potential providers of capital, right? Who holds the capital today? And so the holders of the capital are institutional investors, right? So public pension funds, corporate pension funds, endowments, foundations, corporations, and financial institutions. And so I would invite you to invite them every time they come to your office and ask you for something, that you ask them, what programs do you have in place to provide capital for small businesses? And just asking the question creates a duty, creates a to-do list. That CEO is going to leave that room, or that lobbyist is going to leave the room saying, I've been asked this question. And so I think that moving and the needle in access to capital implies creating more sources of capital for our business owners and asking the question, what are you doing for small businesses? When it comes to access to markets, I think that one of the great tools that legislators have is the convening power. You can just invite all the corporations in New York or all the corporations in your district and say, I want to invite the business owners that are in my district or that are in New York, and I want to invite a few corporations. Come and talk to us. Talk to us about your supplier diversity program. Give us your numbers and give them in a breakdown, so that we know exactly what are you doing by industry. We know exactly how much money is being channeled. We know how many are Hispanic firms, how many are African American firms, how many are women firms. And then track it, monitor it, so that we can track progress. Just asking the question, in my mind, and making sure that as we talk about healthcare, immigration, and education, we just talk about supporting our business owners. It's going to create a momentum, it's going to create an energy about the conversation that hopefully the result of that is more access to markets and more capital. With that, I would like to really thank immensely a wonderful panel and a wonderful audience for being part of this conversation. And I'd like to hear from our legislators, and Mike has a comment, and I think Zenaida has a comment as well. So let's open the floor for questions and thoughts. Mike, if you want to begin? makes the trick.
Also, during budget negotiation, there needs to be a focus on not only state agencies and boards on having growth programs, but also resources that's going to allow these smaller emerging firms to grow. That's fact. And
I
then,
agree.
third and final, as we embark on this National Basketball Association season, we talk about how scoring leaders win scoring titles and team and championships. So I want to recognize my team member. She's just here.
Yes.
She was here at 8:30 this morning, getting ready. So, thank you.
And Mike, make me think about something before I give you an opportunity to be part of the conversation. Part of my experience when we've talked to corporations, if we talk to the supplier diversity officer, and because we're trying to bring a value proposition around investment management, very frequently those supplier diversity officers don't have investment management, don't think about issues of capital, because it's just not the part of their responsibility. So part of the trick has been to access board members, to access CEOs, and tell them about these issues and ask them to create that connectivity between the Treasury Department and the Supplier Diversity Department, and at times the corporate responsibility, so that the conversation gets to be there. Because very frequently a supplier diversity officer will say, look, I'd love to help with capital, but that's not part of my responsibility. So we need to go up the corporate ladder and have the conversations and convene. When we convene, let's not only convene the heads of supplier diversity, let's also convene the board members of those corporations. Let's also convene the CEOs of those corporations and ask them to also be champions and lifters. So with that, Assemblyman Crespo, you're handing it over to him, and then we're passing it on to you. Okay. Ricardo, por favor. I agree. Very good point, Ricardo.
Champions and lifters. And I've had that unfortunate experience where I go to Latino businesses. I got my nice Jewish Diversity the
Yes,
other way.
yes, it is a very
The other
valid
thing is
point.
that those other businesses are already established. You might have some potential clients that are going to firms that have $750 million in revenue. They don't need the business, you know? I need the business. The small Latino architects, the small Latino lawyers, the small Latino accountants, we need the business from our own
Yeah,
community that
I
we're not getting.
I completely agree with you. And it's something that the Jewish community has taught us so well. They, on their own, yeah.
I was in Miami for 8 years. He said, "You're the only Puerto Rican lawyer I have." I do business only with Cubans. And that's because his wife is Puerto
Yeah.
Rican. She likes me.
No, it is a very good thought, Ricardo, and I think it,
But we don't have that conversation enough.
right.
I know that's a separate conversation, but maybe next year, our new chairman.
We'll include that yes.
How we don't do business with ourselves enough.
Yes, very valid point. Yes,
There's a lot of things that Ricardo and I share. Our passion for home goods and shopping for decorative stuff for our home. and the other is, Monika, impressive job. I mean, for me to understand this, you've done a great job simplifying. Yesterday I co-chaired a panel on the Israeli immigrant experience and how we can, relate to that.
Yeah.
So interesting, the folks that put that together, they talked about that very topic, bringing that next year and sharing on the economic success with Israel, how they help one another. So we'll do that. Quick question, Mike, to you. Monika, you mentioned that one of the ways for Hispanic businesses for access to capital is what you raise through your own sales and services, right? It's creating your own capital through your products, right? When we talk about, and then Frederick mentioned how his company has done work, and now with several agencies in several states, and they are still considered to some degree a tier 2. You're not a prime vendor yet. And Mike, you talked about the 30% goal, right? And we've worked so hard in the state legislature to increase the threshold and create attention and opportunity. So tying all those things together, when we talk about that 30%, how do we ensure that the allocation of that 30%, however it breaks down in a given project or in a given agency, that the prime in that case is ensuring that the opportunities that are given to those minority firms create something Frederick mentioned, which is that it's not just a small piece of that doesn't build on your own growth, so that you can then move on and go up that ladder. So within the 30%, what are the built-in protections to ensure that real mentorship and real capacity building is incorporated into that? And are those regs written into that percentage of allocation?
So 30%, we enforce that by signing a management. So we not only sign it, but we allow the contract to be corporate. And after the contract is going to be evaluated on that MWBE goals report. Now, what we did is that if you're not careful, right, and firms get involved in MWBE goal setting, we said, let's take the third party contract out of the equation, right? Let's build a more robust MWBE pool. That will work for us directly. So now, if you're a MWBE subcontractor who has a history of doing work as a subcontractor, we're now going to give you opportunity to work to us as a prime contractor. So now you have the ability to bid on projects up to $3 million. It's a game changer, because now you are in control of your own destiny, right? And we give you support, mentoring, we waive money, right, by having an internal round. So if you're violent, when you bid to us, when you wrap you up, we have been hired a bank, and that bank will issue you a loan up to $900,000 per contract. And as the owner, we're paying 2 public checks until your loan is paid, right? And then finally,
and then my answer should be that it was one for every member, 150 interns. I was the only one that ended up running for office, and the least political of the bunch. I'm a painter by trade, so this is far from what I'm accustomed to. What made a difference for me is that I answered for someone who refused to go to a meeting to the second floor without bringing me in. And whereas some of my colleagues ended up, pushing memos, sending faxes, and not really getting the experience that I had. So that made a difference. It showed me that I can do this, right? Similarly, is there, and I've been talking to several folks over the weekend, is there ways that we can create more joint ventures so that the small business owner, the MWBE, can be sitting at the table and getting the experience and being in the kind of negotiations that really allow them to see the potential and know what to do and how to, because I think from hearing from talking to people, it seems like that will enforce the kind of real growth and mentorship that is needed. And so is there an opportunity to mandate more of that?
Yes, it is. Let's talk. We had a RFP process for an OSIP program that we had, Owners Reach
successful. They allow us to grow. In some instances, these firms, they were at a point where they wanted to cash out of their businesses, and they actually became part of CSA, but they believed in what we were doing, the vision that I described before. So, to summarize, I think there's a lot of things we can do to help, mentor firms, but it's got to be, driven from the very beginning. Because if we can't hit this, it's very difficult to do the rest of it.
I guess the definition of champion or mentor is that person you need when they are about to say no. If you, and that's one of the challenges we have in our community. A lot of our businesses are just being told, no, you don't fit. So I think that part of it is through the help, and we're doing that through the Hispanic Economic Development Council, that is this multi-stakeholder initiative to get, with the help of CUNY and hopefully Columbia and our universities, get a very good body of data about where we are today and what are the industries where we are today, so that we could sort of create a more massive and structural change and have a voice in an aggregate way that we historically haven't had. Mr. Linares, Assemblyman Linares, good to see you.
Monika, for the presentation and the panel. I just want to pick up on Samuel's comment. And there's one thing that to me resonates. I just went through an election and touched base with a lot of small business owners. One of the things that I have observed walking the neighborhood, especially in the business space, is how many small businesses are shutting down. That means you're losing communities, losing jobs, the city, state, and federal government losing revenue, and the service that those small businesses provide not here as well. We have thousands of small businesses that are women-owned, beauty salons, barber shops. You walk a block in North Manhattan and you find grocery elements. We have the bodega, we have the restaurant, and you go down the line and you see a myriad of small businesses. Now, aside from the rent and all the pass along and the underhand bill, every time you money that you have to give under the table to renew a lease with the property owners, there is an aggressive government enforcement arm that does not let those small businesses leave. And every time you get, a violation, you're not talking about pennies. You're talking about rap. You have to go before a judge, and you got to disappear. You have to look for a lawyer. So I'm just saying, never mind access to capital, because we're talking about people who have to work 7 days, and they hardly see their families in order for them to pay the bills and keep avoid shutting their doors. So I guess for me, I'm going back to the state assembly, but the only thing that drives me, and I know you're talking about having access to capital and opportunities, giving government contracts and so forth. For me, is how can I prevent what is going on, not just displacement of families, but displacement of small businesses in neighborhoods like the one that I live in? What kind of help can I bring to them, that is out of the traditional approach of having them go through hell in order to get some type of help? So I'm approaching this now in a different way, because I know they're looking my way. How can you help me stay with my doors open? So I just want to make this comment. Because for me, it's the small startup that is barely making it and doesn't know where they're going to get, whether they're going to be able to pay rent. And some of them are many months in rent and cannot make ends meet. They're barely making it. And for me, that's a do or die in my neighborhood. That's what I'm interested in. I can work with big business, helping create jobs and bring, but it's about a small mom-and-pop store that's making a difference in the neighborhood where my constituents are. That's the point I wanted to make, and I don't know if you can make any comment about that, or we can follow up on this another.
Yeah. No, Teri wants to say something. And I have to say something.
Are they not able to make rent because of the violations they're receiving, or are they not able to make rent? Okay, so two things, right? So when I first started working for the Office of Advocacy, I went out to Queens and I visited a single woman in Mobile, and she had an issue with her pizzeria. They received a violation, and they didn't know that the rules had changed. So basically, they received a huge violation, and the beach should be displayed on the consent
And the one thing I want to say, Guillermo, that I completely agree with you, and that is probably one of the, you think about the largest amounts of problems, they're going to be at that level, because those are, the majority of our business owners are at those levels. And so, from a business perspective, what I would say is, if it's a little restaurant, or a little beauty salon, or a Walmart, you still have to run it efficiently as a good business, right? You still need good clients, you need to grow your revenue, you need to operate well so that you can bring new clients. And so maybe one of the things that can happen is you connecting them with available resources, like the Small Business Administration. I bet you convene them, invite them to your neighborhood and say, we're going to talk business building with all of these, and we're going to invite you to be very good at managing your business. And when I think about the capital roadmap applied to them, you know, there are laws, there are policies, there's a lot of architectural things that can happen. You're talking about companies that are probably $250,000 and less, right? The majority of them. You're talking about industries that are not high growth, but that are essential for community. And so that component of community impact is there. Because guess what? If they disappear, there will not be bread at the table of many families. And so they're impact investors. When you talk about community investing that you might want to bring in, like the Robin Hood Foundation, for example, who eradicates and fights poverty in the city. So bring them in. They're capital providers. What can you help us in order to create sustainability in these industries? So I think the component that at the stakeholder level, you know, there should be nonprofits who care about it. There should be legislators like you care about it. And what type of capital do they need? They need to improve their revenue base, right? And maintain and improve their revenue base. But they also might need a little bit of an equity injection. They might also need some sort of a loan. Where could they come from? Probably DFI, probably Community Development Fund, the type of organizations who would be interested. I know you're going to say yes because she has a tremendous amount of experience with these types of. So I think that there's a business road, there's a capital road, and there's a red tape working road that I think there could be. And if you have my commitment, I think that we need to work in billion-dollar businesses, but we also need to work on eradicating poverty because it all just comes together. We tend to build billion-dollar businesses. And let me say, in my personal story, let me tell you a personal story. Yesterday I got rejected for my refinances, the JP Morgan case. They rejected a mortgage refinance. And see the type of things that we do. So the issues are very much at every level. Even, and I can tell you, the stories of Jaime, the stories of Fred, we still are struggling to be able to have our businesses the opportunity they require. We still have organizations in the city that talk about how much they provide given the minority of firms. We don't have majority business. We don't need to. There's no path. There's no path to get it. So at every level, we must continue the conversation. And I'm very glad to bring up that segment because it's probably the largest portion of our community. I feel this conversation has been a wonderful one. Madame, you want to say something, Madame?
Say, why do you have waivers? Why any, you just remove the waiver policy? Why do the organizations waiver? To me, it's hypocritical. There are minority businesses, you want that to fight them?
Where there is a lack of firms in the marketplace, certain key areas, that goal, a higher goal than the
want to acknowledge our chair of Somos, who's also a business owner and who we see eye to eye in these issues of, and this mission of making entrepreneurialism an important part of our conversation. Cesar runs a waste management company and also has gone through the sufferings of finding the right capital, finding access to markets. I think that he's a great advocate and partner with us as chair of Somos in this agenda. He's also telling me that lunch is served, so I don't know